things theology, all things theology. We chop it up properly, without an apology. Gotta give that theology to God, hollow be, cause this is how we do it at All Things Theology.
Okay, so on Twitter yesterday afternoon, I saw someone saying, I'd like to hear what James White says about the Billy Carson Wes Huff debate. And I'm like, sorry, don't have any idea what that is. I do not live in social media. The only social media platform that I spend serious time in is Twitter. Facebook have some really cool... The things I like about Facebook are the little videos, the sort of up and down videos, clips or something, of various, especially baseball stuff, some cool triple play or something like that. And Calvin and Hobbes comic strips. Whatever you click like on, you'll get a bunch of it. So, I was clicking like on watches for a while so you could see all these cool watches. And then I started clicking on World War II fighter aircraft, so I got a bunch of World War II fighter aircraft. It's almost like playing with the algorithm just for the fun of it. But otherwise, I don't... About the only thing I like about Facebook is its memories thing. Like it threw up a picture yesterday from 9 years ago of little Clementine. And she was just so tiny. And she was staying with Grandma and Grandpa overnight, and she was probably watching something on TV, and I think she was eating meatballs, which everybody in our family is going, yeah, probably. Just something my wife does. When Kelly doesn't know what else to cook, she makes meatballs. It's just sort of how it works. Anyway, but Facebook and me, so I don't live on these things, so I don't see this stuff. And so I was given a link, and I managed to download. Got a new computer, and I haven't figured out how to make it do some of the stuff that my old computer could do. I'm sure it can. It's just I have to catch up with the technology, I guess. Probably a faster way to do it now. Anyway, got it downloaded in audio format. I watched a few minutes of it in video just so I'd have a mental picture of what was going on. And so I asked, well, what's this about? Because I didn't know who was involved. I have found out since then that Wes Huff spoke at the Ezra Institute apologetics thing that Jeff spoke at. I'm wondering if that was the one where I was with them up in upstate New York, and then they went up into Canada, and I went elsewhere. Maybe it was. Anyway, so Wes Huff has spoken for the Ezra Institute, Joe Boot, and so that's a big positive thing from my perspective. And so I asked for a summary. Some people gave me a summary, and then another guy linked me to about a 16-minute video that I listened to first this morning as I started my drive. And it was a guy... Evidently what happened is this was so negative for this Billy Carson guy that he did a 3-hour video responding to what happened in that debate. And again, it was not a debate. There was no moderator. There was no thesis statement. There was no equal time. Wasn't even close to equal time. The guy whose webcast it is, I think, took up most of the time, actually, especially toward the end. But so it wasn't a debate. It was a discussion. And this Billy Carson guy, I'm pretty sure someone sent me a clip of this fellow talking about something, I don't know, about 6 months ago. And I just remember watching it going, what? This is this guy didn't have a clue what he's talking about when he's talking about the Bible. I mean, what? It was sort of like almost a black Hebrew Israelite thing with space aliens thrown in for the fun of it. It was. I think I bookmarked it. I don't think I ever got around to commenting on it. I don't think I did, but I'm pretty sure it was the same guy. And evidently, he's making bank with all this stuff that he does about ancient civilizations, and he travels around the world, and he throws all this stuff together, and so this guy did this 16-minute video where he summarizes Carson's attempt to do damage control. And that's where I learned a lot about him. Because there's this whole section where he's mocking the people who he feels are attacking him. He says they're all poor. He's not just a worker bee. He brags a lot about, the places he stays and the billionaires that he knows, and it's really a massive turnoff. It's just like, ugh, okay. But lo and behold, he's telling people, I'm going to sue these guys. I'm going to sue the guy who, the Mark Menard. And look at the beginning of the thing, they're just great buddies, and Menard supported him in a lot of stuff that he was saying. Menard claims to be a Christian, but he's clearly massively confused, doesn't understand the Old Testament. He doesn't hold Jesus' own view of Scripture. Okay? He's created Jesus that he really, really likes, but that never existed. It's a Jesus of emotion. It's a Jesus who makes me feel good, but it's not the Jesus of Scripture. And so he wasn't, Wes was going up against two different positions with these guys, but he's talking about suing for $1 million. And you're like, like I said at the beginning, it's Barry Lynn all over again. Wow, okay. Certainly means that no one's ever going to engage him again, nor should they, given his behavior. But then he's coming up with all these excuses. I had pneumonia, and I was in the hospital, and I still had a Band-Aid on my arm from the IVs and all the... And maybe that's true. I don't know, but I certainly couldn't tell it. And he certainly never made any reference to it. And as the guy who made the video pointed out, the arguments he was using about the stuff they were supposed to be talking about are found in all of his videotapes before this. So, what happened in the conversation? Well, and this is what I would say to Wes. He, first of all, did a great job. Was very patient. Probably more patient than I would have been. People all the time go, I actually had a conversation with the guy. I called him on the phone. He asked me to, and we talked, and he said, how do you stay so calm and patient in these debate situations? I'm like, I don't. I know it may seem that way, but not really. I mean, most of the time it's just, hey, once your opponent starts losing it, just keep giving them rope and let them do what they're going to do. But Wes was very, very patient. Even though he kept getting cut off, it wasn't anything other than, when I look over like that, I'm looking at the cache thing over on the feed on the screen, and making sure that the connection's still happening, because look, this technology is not yet perfected. I just think back to 2016 when I did that stuff on the Dr. Drew show via Skype, and how much better things are now. And I'm sitting in an RV, hundreds of miles from home. I've still got, a drive tomorrow, not a long drive, thankfully, but it's a downhill drive with one big climb in the middle. But I'm coming to you via satellite. And I set the dishes right out there It's not really a dish. It's just a flat thing that big. And I got it oriented right. And then the signal stabilized after a while. And here I am. I mean, it's wow. Things have really changed. But even down at the office when I'm back home, I've had the internet just disappear right in the middle of doing an interview or right at the end of an interview, whatever else. It still happens. Things are not perfected yet. And so, especially toward the end, I think Wes got cut off for like 6 or 7 minutes because the two of them were just hammering away on the Old Testament and the God of the Old Testament. They were being great Gnostics. And Wes was trying to explain basic hermeneutics, and neither one of them would even touch with a 10-foot pole. No, not interested in that at all. We've made up our decisions, and we've made our decisions. We're sticking with it. So anyway, right at the start, the big thing was that this Billy Carson guy says that Jesus was not crucified. And when you hear someone say that, two things cross my mind. Have they been influenced by Islam? Surah 4:157 in the Quran, they did not crucify him. It was made to appear to them, and that's understood different ways by Muslims. Have they been influenced somehow by Islam? And are they aware that even the most radical skeptics, John Dominic Crossan, for example, Bart Ehrman, they'll all say the same thing. The most sure historical fact about Jesus' life is his crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. They may question everything else about Jesus' life, but the one thing that's really not questionable is the crucifixion. And so I'm like, okay, I'll be interested to see how this pans out. So Carson says, well, the crucifixion isn't found in the Sinai Bible, which is much earlier than the King James Bible. Now, I can guarantee you that I know what was probably going through Wes's mind at that point, and he said he'd been listening to stuff, so I'm sure he wasn't surprised. But when you hear someone say something like that, they have just said to you, I know nothing about the history of the Bible, but I'm going to make dogmatic statements about it anyways, and probably enjoy it while I'm doing it. Because there is no such thing as a Sinai Bible. He was talking about Codex Sinaiticus. And Codex Sinaiticus, I was told, I saw someone else made a comment that Wes turned around and pulled his facsimile of Sinaiticus. Now, that baby weighs at least 45 pounds. I mean, and when we go to the side camera in the studio, in the regular studio back in Phoenix, mine's down behind me, where the 1550 Stephanus is. And I don't think Wes has a 1550 Stephanus. Sorry, bro. Maybe someday. But because I know you'd like one. Anyway, he pulls out Sinaiticus, and I can only imagine that Billy Carson's like, uh-oh. Because he's been saying it wrong in video after video after video after video after video. He clearly doesn't even know what it is. He does not know it is, yes, the earliest complete Bible that we have. Not in both original languages, because it's in Greek all the way through. But when it was discovered, it was certainly the earliest Septuagint that we had, the Old Testament in Greek. And together with Vaticanus was known before Sinaiticus. But they're probably contemporaneous as far as their dating between 325 and 350. So all he has to do is say, and the crucifixions throughout Codex Sinaiticus. I guess Carson tried to say, well, it's not in his 3-hour rebuttal video. It's not in, the Sinai Bible doesn't have the long writing of Mark. Well, the long writing of Mark contains the resurrection story, but not the crucifixion. The crucifixion part of Mark is right there in Sinaiticus, as it is in Matthew and Luke and John. And the references to Christ crucified are found all through Paul, and he's just been wrong all along. Don't know where he got it. It did seem, in light of what he immediately defaulted to, that at some point in the not too distant past, Billy Carson ran into some Islamic Dawah material online and heisted it, just borrowed it wholesale. Because once Wes is sitting there holding Codex Sinaiticus, says, it's in here, he goes, oh, I misspoke. He didn't misspeak. That was a lie. All of his videos had said the Sinai Bible. He had repeated this over and over again. It almost made me think of Ergen Canner. See, this is called a microphone. You talk into it. It records things. You can't just go, I misspoke, when you've misspoken 25 times on videos that you still have on your YouTube channel. That's not misspeaking. You were in error. You were wrong. Big time wrong. So he goes, I didn't mean Codex Sinaiticus. I meant that I kept this big, huge unit on the road. I didn't even hit the rumble strips. He goes, I meant the Gospel of Barnabas. Okay. I don't remember, and again, anybody who wants to can go back to the transcripts page at aomin.org and put in Gospel of Barnabas, and I'm sure it'll pull it up. We've walked through this. It would have been probably between 2006 and 2010 or so, during what I would call the intense Islamic period of my study and writing and debating and traveling and debating in mosques in South Africa and London and down in Australia and places like that. We have talked about the Gospel of Barnabas, which is different than the Epistle of Barnabas. A lot of people get really confused. Those names get attached to all sorts of things. But the reality is the Gospel of Barnabas is a 14th century forgery, possibly by someone. It's difficult to determine their motivations. It's such a royal mess, theologically, historically. It's a study in anachronism. The things that it says existed in the past that didn't, and it clearly the author had been influenced by Islam, but whether he's a Muslim or not, it's hard to say, because he has things in there that Muslims don't believe too. So that's strange as to how exactly that works. But it's an abject forgery. And I've had Muslims bring it up in debates, of course. And, normally it comes up to where you only have the opportunity of responding to it in rebuttal. Rebuttal periods are notoriously short, so you can only say so many things. But it's a complete forgery. And it's embarrassing that anyone would ever make reference to it as if it has anything to do with the contemporary period of Jesus's death, burial, and resurrection. Now, what was interesting is Billy Carson, as soon as he pulled out Sinaiticus, he said something along the lines of, well, I'll go with that. I'll go with what he said, with what Wes said about Sinaiticus obviously containing testimony of the crucifixion of Christ. And then he switched over to the Gospel of Barnabas. And as soon as Wes is like, yeah, that's even worse for your case, because now you're talking about something that's clearly forged and fraudulent. He did not even try to make a defense. It's pretty impossible to do so anyways, but he didn't even try. He said, well, let's talk about the Old Testament. And Wes is like, whoa. Sort of hard to stay with one particular train of thought there. He just knew he couldn't defend this stuff. And again, I'm sitting here thinking back over 30 plus years of doing debates, and I'm thinking about, no, that guy did the same type. Well, that guy did that, and oh yeah, I've seen this kind of thing happen over and over and over again. When I debated Barry Lynn, interesting parallel because he tried to sue us as well. But when I debated Barry Lynn, the questions I was asking him during cross-examination, he obviously had never been asked, even though he was did media appearances all the time on the major news outlets. And so when I forced him into the text, he just didn't even know what to do. He just became so flustered and so angry and so defensive that by the end of the debate, he was yelling at the audience because they all knew what had happened that night as well. Just like everybody who watched this knew what had happened in that context too. And so he goes off into other areas and starts dealing with Babylonian writings and, just completely outside the realm of what the conversation was supposed to be at the beginning. That's why I said earlier, he should never do a debate, a real debate. I don't know that he would know what the rules of real debate are. Most people don't. But if in a real debate he responded the way he did in this conversation, the debate would have lasted about 20 minutes. And it would have been called because he would have been, well, I don't really want to talk about that. And so you just move on from there. So it was, I guess he had to leave at some point. And like I said, what has happened since then, I cannot possibly imagine that any attorney would take this case and file these charges. Because when you're doing it civilly, you're open to countersuits. And what he said in that 3-hour thing, just the clips that were played by this other fellow, more than enough to utterly obliterate any case that could possibly be made, and therefore to open the possibility for a countersuit being highly successful. So I don't think anything is going to come of it. But it does tell you a lot about, this guy's got money to protect. He's got followers to protect. And so there's always been that historically. Paul said to the Ephesian elders, there's going to be people who arise from amongst you, drawing disciples away after themselves. Quite true, but now it's become multiplied in the social media realm, where, there are people who make a huge living solely off of what they do on YouTube. And, if we monetized our channel, we could make some serious bucks. But we chose a long time ago not to do that. Primary reason was so that YouTube would not be able to control what we said. And the reason we do this is so that we can say what we need to say. We'll trust God's people to support us. And you all have done so. and I ask you to continue doing so here at the end of the year. We definitely need that support, but we can trust God's people to do that, and so we don't have to engage in that kind of activity. But someone who is dependent upon that kind of income from having followers, that's going to impact how they behave, what they say, what they're willing to say and not say. And really, it has a huge negative impact upon the truth content of what they're saying. And there are good people who do that. And then there are people who are obviously just attacking Christianity, which is what Billy Carson's doing. He certainly has very strong anti-Christian views. So my congratulations to Wes Huff. It was very satisfying to hear someone, knows the difference between the Gospel of Barnabas and the Epistle of Barnabas, and knows what's in Sinaiticus, and he says he does a lot of work in papyrology and things like that. I think he and I would probably have an awesome dinner or lunch that would leave the people sitting at the tables around us wondering if we were space aliens ourselves, discussing, I'd like to talk to him about the doctoral work I was doing in South Africa on P45 and CBGM. And I would still love to finish that, complete that stuff. But the man that I wanted to do it with has had to retire because of a heart attack. So I don't think it's ever going to happen. But still fascinated by it, and I still think it's very valuable stuff. But sounds like the kind of guy I could have that kind of conversation with. Fascinating background and history that he has in languages and things like that. So it was really neat to hear someone be able to take that stuff on, because as I have said for years and years and years, I think one of the real weaknesses in apologetics in the church today is that most apologists have no knowledge of the languages. They don't know church history, biblical history. They don't know anything about the manuscripts. You can't hand them the Nestle-Aland text or the UBS 5th text or a volume of the ECM. And they won't have any idea what they're looking at. They won't be able to. You say, well, here's the variant. What do you think? Don't know. Never heard of it before. I think it's one of the weaknesses. And so it's really neat to hear someone else saying the same things, and who's obviously got a whole lot more energy, a whole lot younger. In fact, I'm not sure how old he is, but there's absolutely zero question that I'm definitely old enough to be his father, and probably older than that. So yeah, that's exciting to see, because as I said, I'm not getting any younger. So it's neat to see that kind of thing out there, and to see it done so well with the patience in trying to explain, even though he did not get the opportunity to even finish his points on hermeneutics. The host just almost had a visceral response to his attempt to explain what Paul was saying to the Ephesians, and God wouldn't do that if he wanted the Bible to be read by people in other places. And just these guys don't realize the presuppositions they have that they have accepted without ever having examined them, ever having thought through them. It's pretty amazing. So anyway, you might find, if you find it online, you might find the first 90 minutes, and then it sort of went off. Maybe not. You'd certainly get everything you needed out of the first hour, I would say. And if you just want to hear the actual topic, which was supposed to be the crucifixion of Jesus, that didn't take long. And as the other guy who put that 16-minute video, I think it was 16 minutes, it was something like that. As he said, Carson's own followers were turning on him because they could see that he had not been prepared. He did not have answers. He capitulated on key elements of his own presentation early on and then tried to run off to other areas. Wow. That was it. The response I'm seeing is very similar to what happened 8.5 years ago when I debated Elder Rakah of the Black Hebrew Israelites. And he simply collapsed. Now, we didn't have the dynamic of all the money back then. But very similar type of thing in that context too.
Oh, grace and peace. Thank you for watching another episode of All Things Theology. If you enjoyed what you heard today, go on and give me a like. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell. I promise to give you weekly lives, videos, interactions, exposing false teachers, sharing with you, the viewer, my theological beliefs, things about the culture, and the Bible. So if you're here for that, come on and join us. Also, if you would like to support this channel financially, you can do so by becoming a Patreon member or a YouTube member. Links are in the description below. You can see content before it drops. You can also have Q&A sessions with also other Patreon members, YouTube members as well. So if you would like that, hit the description link in below.